right, welcome everybody to the CLA Conversation Series. Today is our first one with Mr. Rick Bragg. He is a 1996 Pulitzer Prize winner, and it is an honor to sit next to you today. But welcome to Auburn. Congratulations on your award, the Roy Bain Award. So how is it being on the plains today?
Oh, it's always been fun. When I was a young man, I used to come all the
Often?
time. Yeah, I was a sports writer at the beginning of my career, and coming to Auburn was probably, Auburn and Tuscaloosa were the two most important things that we would do, in the course of a work week. And so the place has changed. It's grown so much that I actually got lost coming in.
I mean, you will. I mean, even since I'm a upcoming senior, even since my freshman year, it's been, changed a lot. But just from conversations today, you are a natural-born storyteller. So can you tell me a little bit about growing up in Alabama? And I know that kind of geared a lot of your writing. So can you tell me about any of the memories that you relived when you used to put those memories on the paper?
Sure. I mean, I grew up at the knee of the best front porch or back porch storytellers. I think the stories were a little better on the back porch.
Oh, for sure.
And I grew up with people that could make you taste the blood in your own mouth from a fist that struck theirs in a fist fight. They could make you hear the chains rattling in the pocket of the deputy as he chased them down a dirt road. My mother and my aunts could make you see a baby that was born or hear a funeral that was preached. They were very good at talking in color. They could talk in color, in images, and detail. And I'm kind of a one-trick pony. That's all I really can do. And telling the stories of those people turned out to be the way that you tell them of other or anyone. So everything that I know about telling a story, I learned from them and honed as a young writer in Alabama, moving from press box to press box, or from emergency to emergency, or tornado to tornado.
Okay, so you mentioned that your family had a pretty big role in how you started storytelling. So what was the reaction to your storytelling when they read your books and a lot of your stories that came out?
I think most of them were tickled. Most of them were happy with it. Some of them were mystified that I was paying attention because, I was that kid running around playing in the dirt that they worried, we wonder if he's ever going to make anything of himself. Some of them were mollified. My mother absolutely did not understand what the big deal was. And one or two of my cousins probably wanted to catch me in a dark alley and hit me over the head.
Right. And so you mentioned your mother, Margaret. So I'm sure she played a huge role in your life. So what did she have to say about your storytelling, and what is your favorite memory of her?
She, again, continues to be mollified, she enjoys them because we try to tell them now. In the past decade or so, the stories have been heavier on humor, heavier on the more gentle aspect of our lives.
Right.
The books have a lot of grit in them, a lot of grit and a lot of pain, because they had to have. But since we've all gotten old, we don't like necessarily to rehash or relive the pain of the past. We tend to, nostalgia is a powerful, powerful thing for a writer. And we tend to relive gentler, softer things. We relive Thanksgiving dinners. We relive things that make life worth living. So but she just really doesn't understand what the big deal is. Didn't everybody stand in line for commodity cheese and peanut butter with a baby on their hip? Didn't everybody have to walk to the jail to get their husband out? Didn't everybody have to do without? And didn't everybody wait to eat until their children were done to make sure that there was enough to go around? Didn't everybody do that?
Right.
And so she really doesn't see what she did as anything unusual. And by anything unusual, it means special. And no matter how many thousands and thousands and thousands of people write letters or reach out to her and tell her otherwise, she thinks she didn't do anything that everybody didn't do. And maybe in some ways, some small ways, she's right.
I know personal stories, I feel like they are the most important. You know, they really tell the true, life struggles and just what people go through. So in addition to your personal stories that you've gotten the opportunity to tell, I know you've covered a lot of high-profile cases, both good and bad. So can you tell us one of the most, memorable stories that you've had to cover?
Well, sometimes the most memorable were not necessarily the biggest, but I covered the Oklahoma City bombing. I covered political unrest and killing in Haiti. I covered the Pakistan border with Afghanistan in a city called Peshawar and other places in Pakistan when we were writing about militant Islamic fundamentalism and the birth of the genesis of the hatred and violence that would result in the attacks on the World Trade Center. But sometimes the most important ones, the ones of the greatest scope and the greatest bloodshed and the greatest sadness, are not the ones that you want to remember. I did a very sad story about a pauper cemetery in New Orleans, a place called Holt Cemetery, where folks there in New Orleans who don't have the money to necessarily bury their people in those crypts, the very beautiful crypts. They call them cities of the dead. But these are folks that can't afford that, so they just bury in the ground. Well, if you bury in the ground in New Orleans, the water table's high.
Right.
So, but going and talking to the people who were trying to make those graves look nice for their people was one of the more touching things I've ever, and I'll remember. And then I also got to goof off a lot.
Right.
I did a drive-in tour of North Carolina barbecue. I did a story about trying to find a good grouper sandwich. I did a story about, if there was a way to goof off, I probably found it.
That's always good. I mean, especially with storytelling and, on the road, it's good to have some time off at least.
Yeah, unfortunately, I fear that time off was what I kind of became a master at, it seemed. I worked very hard, but I worked hard in spells. And then, if I could find a way to disappear for a while,
Definitely
I would find a way.
For sure.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned a little bit about Haiti. I know I had the opportunity to go to Haiti for a mission trip. And so it's a beautiful country. And you said you did reports there. So can you tell us more about that?
I went to Haiti twice. I went when the military coup, which was of course backed by a faction of mostly the wealthier citizens, ran out the democratically elected president Jean-Bertrand Aristide. And when they kicked him out of the country, there was bloodshed and violence. So I went to cover that. And then I went back when they brought Aristide back, when the U.S. Backed intervention, military intervention, brought Aristide back into the country.
Right.
A lot of bloodshed, a lot of just suffering.
And so what kind of got you through those times? I know that reporting some of these stories were heart-wrenching. And
the thing that you have to remember is, and it's the thing that I told myself whenever I would think that this was piling up around you, is that what right do I have to complain of this somehow being hard on me when I get to go home?
Right.
When the plane leaves at the end of the month or the end of the week or the end of 3 or 4 months, when the plane leaves, I get to be on it and leave the people who are doing the suffering and doing the dying and absorbing the pain, and they will continue to absorb that pain when I am home. So very quickly in my writing life, I learned that you really don't get to sit around and talk about how hard it is on you.
And I know, back to the topic of personal stories, Dr. Wayne Flint was going to be introducing you today at the Journalism Awards. So I know that he kind of has a similar background of you. He grew up in Calhoun County, a couple of miles down from you.
Yeah.
He has a memoir, Keeping the Faith.
Yeah.
And so what...
Very good memoir.
Very good. So what are your thoughts on him and, impact he could have possibly had in your life?
I've always said that Wayne Flint is who I wanted to be if I ever grew up. He is who I would want to be. His books tackle the issues of conscience, that I am not grown up enough or a good enough person to get my hands around. He is he's been described as the conscience of our state, and I think he is. And he's who I'd like to be. Yeah, he's who I'd like to be. His books are in every book I have ever done. His Poor But Proud. The spirit of that creeps into everything I've ever written. They're kind of a spine in a way. My stories are more personal.
Right.
And are more are more tightly focused on a family, where Wayne explores the entire condition of our people. And I mean, if you think about it, that's a trick.
Right.
That's a trick.
I think that's so cool. You really got to look up to someone who inspired your writing. So I know that you are a professor at the University of Alabama, and so you really get to invest in those young adults. So what advice do you have for those young adults who want to be, the next Rick Bragg?
Well, first off, I tell them to try to achieve some greater ambition than that.
No.
Surely there's something worthwhile that they can shoot for. But I'm a one-trick pony. I can tell a story, and but I just tell them, quite frankly, to read, to read, to read Dickens, and read Eudora Welty, and read, the classics, to read Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove, to read whatever really makes them want to read more, and to make a decision if they want to write for a living. Make a decision on what genre they want to. I hope it would be nonfiction, and if they would try to write stories of their own people, I encourage them to do that. But so many good writers want to be novelists. They want to do that. And I probably would have done that myself, except that I had these wonderful stories of my people to tell. And when they run out, I probably will do a novel. But they don't seem to run out. Every now and then, a snarky reviewer will say, I guess now he'll write about his Aunt Myrtle. I actually have an Aunt Myrtle,
right.
And
you can write about her.
I can, but I love writing about my people. And, my people were the people of the foothills of the Appalachians. Their problems, their poverty, their struggles, their violence was special and unique. Yet, a thing shared. Like, I almost got in a fist fight at a book event out on the West Coast because a woman was ready to whip me over, and I think she could have taken me.
She could have.
Yeah, she was ready to whip me over my claim that I come from the toughest people on the planet. I mean, again, those people in cotton mills who give their fingers, hands, and arms to those machines, people who dig coal, people who work in steel mills, people who work in sweatshops. I think I come from the toughest people on the planet. Right. People who, walk behind a mule.
Right.
Well, she told me that I might be completely full of myself, and that her people dragged in nets in the Pacific Northwest with ice on their fingers, and that they were the toughest people. And you know, she had a claim. She had a claim. And I'm glad it didn't come to a stand-up fist fight, because she'd have knocked me down. She would have taken me.
You did not want that.
She'd have sent me to my maker. And but I think that those stories, the only people who can tell them are us.
Right.
And whether those people, it doesn't matter about color. You know, I think that people who struggle have a better narrative than people who don't struggle.
Exactly.
But you never know inside a family who is struggling.
Right.
And so I hope that they shoot someday, because that is how we keep our people alive.
Exactly.
I believe. I think so much more so than movies, which tend to turn us into cliches.
For sure.
You know, we've always avoided that with my books. We've always avoided Hollywood because, you know, they'd put my mom in a beehive hairdo and a leather miniskirt.
Right.
You know, and that cannot happen.
Something unnatural to her,
Yeah, that
obviously.
cannot be.
So with the advice that you've gotten over the years, it seems like you've gotten a wealth of knowledge just from interactions and a lot of people pouring into you. So what is the best advice that you've received?
I think the best advice I ever received from anybody was to calm down. Calm down. Same advice I give young people. You know, calm down. Read something that you love. You know, read something that speaks to you. You know, and you know, while I was kidding a minute ago, we all know that when you're in college, the time that you should be, you don't have time.
Right.
You know, you've got reading lists and assignments. And my students tell me, when am I going to read Dickens when I have this
This
much,
high stuff
you know,
to
to
do?
do? Yeah, so it is a bizarre thing, you know. But when I was a young guy, editors would tell me, you know, calm down, try to slow down a little bit, and get a life. I had a very good editor named Bill Kovich, who I never got to work for him, but he was the curator of the Neiman program at Harvard. And he told me when I was there, he said, you know, relax if you can.
Right.
I don't think you can. But
Sometimes it's hard to.
Relax if you can.
Right. Yeah, and I definitely think that's important too. I know you've written a lot of books in the past, a lot of stories. So what is on the horizon for you next? Any books coming up to make us aware of?
I'm doing something with my mom for fun that should do well, but she has never written down a recipe.
Oh gosh.
And we wanted to do something easy because we're both in a place in our life where we need easy's good.
Right.
So she's never written down a recipe, yet she's the best cook in the world.
Yeah, and that's usually what makes the best cooks, I know. And just our final question, I know, just for fun. So I know you teach at the University of Alabama. You know, you said you visited the Plains quite often. So War Eagle or Roll Tide?
Well, see, I would be over the proverbial barrel. I realized that I might not get out of town alive, but I grew up a Roll Tide guy. I grew up a Roll Tide guy in the foothills of the Appalachians in the northern part of the state, but the eastern part of the state. So there were a lot of Auburn people there too. So it was pretty evenly divided. But we were Alabama fans. We were huge Bear Bryant fans. I actually got to cover Bear Bryant as a young reporter, but I also got to cover Pat Dye. I also got to cover, I don't remember if I actually covered Bo Jackson or not, but I think I might have been gone by the time Bo really hit. But I've been a Roll Tide guy. This will get me kicked out of Tuscaloosa, but I pull for Auburn when they're playing anybody but Alabama.
And that's what most people do that straddle the fence, so that's good.
And I know that some people will cop out and say, well, I'm an SEC fan.
Right.
But I've never been one of those people who I think that you ought to pull for the teams close to you. I'm a huge Jacksonville State fan because that's where I went to school. Technically, I'm still a freshman at Jacksonville State.
Right.
And but I tell you what, when I'm away from home, I watch Alabama. I watch the Auburn game. I hate it when they conflict like they did this
Right.
past weekend. But if you are too kind to Auburn, if you believe me, I have friends in Tuscaloosa that if I say too many nice things about Auburn, they'll run me out of town. They will put my car on a trailer
Right.
and take all my belongings and haul them to like the closest state line and leave them behind.
Right.
So you have to kind of walk
Walk the line. You can always wear your orange and blue under your clothes when you teach, so that's fine.
Well,
no one has to know.
I have so many friends who are Auburn fans, and it is very difficult living away from home,
Right.
and winding up in a place where it's not that nobody cares about either, because we know that there are Auburn fans in Manhattan, there are Alabama fans in L.A., they're everywhere. But I remember being marooned in cities around the world where you couldn't get either one of them on
Exactly.
on TV, and I remember once trying to watch a soccer game
Right.
and thinking to myself, if I can just get home.
Exactly.
If I can just get home, I'll watch anything with a football. It's good to be home.
Exactly. But we want to thank you so much for coming and doing this today. You just spread a wealth of knowledge to all of us. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, you were way too nice to me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.